Hey everyone, I'm Armor Gaming, welcome back to my channel and welcome to Monster Analysis. Up for analysis today is Incognita. It is known that Incognita can read destiny, but some monsters, after observing her for years, have come to the conclusion that it is she who writes it. So here we have Incognita as a child, as a teenager, as an adult, and I gotta say I really do love the adult design. It gives off this godlike presence. It's pretty awesome. And with that being said, let's jump into her stats, which are also pretty impressive. Power 3432. That is actually the third highest stat for light legendary monsters, but out of the 14 light legendary monsters as of the time I'm recording this video, this puts her in 4th place, which is pretty impressive. Incognita has a life of 27,747. Now this stat isn't actually that impressive, it's actually tied for 10th place out of the 14 light legendary monsters, so it's not that great. However, it is pretty high compared to like every single monster in the Monster Legends kingdom. And for speed we have an impressive 3,454, and I say the speed is impressive because it actually makes her tied for 4th place with monsters like Lux and Ogma. So in a nutshell, comparing her only to light legendary monsters, high power, low life, high speed. And with that being said, her trait is immune to possession, which is amazing because she is the first light legendary monster to have an immunity to possession, and this actually makes her really valuable if you face off against magic or dark monsters. Lots of dark monsters have possession skills and lots of magic monsters have possession skills. However, in terms of light monsters only, lots of light monsters tend to give out blind and daze, so it's really up to you to decide how good her trait is, but according to me, I'm gonna go ahead and say having immune to possession is one of the best traits you can have. Moving on to her default and special skills, we have Card Slap. It deals low physical damage to a single enemy, 25 damage, 13 stamina, no cooldown. We also have Flip Strike. Deals low light damage to a single enemy, 30 damage, 13 stamina, no cooldown. And for her special, we have Luck Requires Sacrifice. Look at this skill, it is a long list of effects, and that's because this skill reads, deals very heavy light damage to all enemies, applies 3 random negative effects to all targets. 3 random negative effects. Again, it's an AoE, 20 damage. Now there's a few things I gotta point out about this skill. For one, the description says deals very heavy light damage. Now 20, I may be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure 20 is not very heavy light damage. So I'm not sure which of these are wrong, if it's the stats here, if it's the description. Another thing I should mention, it says applies 3 random negative effects to all targets. That is super awesome. That actually reminds me of Lernian's skills. Lernian is a magic monster who has yet to actually come out in the game, and if this skill does do what it says it does, if it does apply 3 random negative effects, I don't care if the damage is 0, I don't care if the damage is very heavy light damage, the damage can be whatever. But if this skill does really apply 3 random negative effects to all targets, now for me the name Luck Requires Sacrifice, that doesn't sound like it would apply 3 random negative effects. That's all I'm gonna say. But again, if it does apply 3 negative random effects, it is a phenomenal skill. But anyways, let's move things over to skills group 1. In skills group 1, we have a skill called Fate Speaks. Deals moderate special damage, applies 1 random negative effect to target, requires cooldown. So it targets a single enemy, 35 damage, 28 stamina, 1 turn cooldown. So okay, nice, it deals a random negative effect. However, the damage from the skill is too low, there's no reason to run this skill, although the effect is pretty good. Then we have the Leaves Whisper. Deals moderate light damage, 50% chance of blinding target. It targets a single enemy with 35 damage, 26 stamina, no cooldown. And if you've seen any of my analysis, anything that's 50% chance of doing something is usually not worth running, so you can completely disregard this skill. Last but not least, we have Forgiveness. Removes all negative of status effects from allies, requires cooldown. So it targets a single ally, it costs 25 stamina, 2 turn cooldown, and it just removes all the debuffs. It's too much of a high stamina cost for the effects, so there's no reason to run anything from skills group 1. So that's gonna move us into skills group 2. So starting things off in skills group 2, we have a skill called Entropy. Deals moderate special damage, may blind target. So it targets a single enemy, dealing 45 damage, it costs 28 stamina, and it has no cooldown. A 100% blind skill is pretty good. Now again, I mentioned lots of light monsters do have immunity to blind, so for that reason, if you're planning to use in Team Wars, it may not be a skill worth running. And actually, in fact, even if you're just gonna use her for player versus player, I don't really recommend this skill, just because her other skills are significantly better. So that moves us over to Fate is Fair. Removes all negative status effects from allies, adds stamina regeneration to all allies, requires cooldown. So this is definitely an improved version of a previous skill. Instead of targeting one ally, it actually targets all of your allies. It only costs 30 stamina and it has a 3-turn cooldown. Now you're removing all negative effects from your whole team and you're giving your whole team stamina regeneration. Now, as good as this skill is, you may or may not want to run it. So let me talk about all the other skills and then we'll discuss what possible skill sets are for her. Moving things over to Luck of the Draw. May give double damage to all allies, may give precision to all allies, requires cooldown. It is a team buff skill, 30 stamina, 4-turn cooldown. Your whole team gets double damage, your whole team gets increased accuracy. That is crazy good. And I'm actually going to spend quite a bit of time talking about this skill because it's a lot better than it appears to be at first sight. So one reason it's really good is because if you remember, Incognita has one of the highest powers for light monsters. Having one of the highest powers means that the monster can be a main attacker. So if this is a main attacker that has a self buff skill, but it's not only a self buff, you also get increased precision and your whole team also gets 2x damage and increased precision. That is super good even if you're an attacker. Now on the opposite spectrum, let's say you use this monster as a supporter and you use her with life runes. Keep in mind she also has one of the best speeds for light monsters, and in fact 3454, that's a good speed overall. She's faster than many deny monsters. So if you wanted to use all speed runes on her, that would mean that Incognita could go first, use Luck of the Draw, give your whole team double damage and precision, and then your deny monster can go, and your deny monster can use its AoE and it's going to have increased accuracy, so chances are the deny skills are going to land all across the board, but you're also going to be dealing some extra damage, and then it'll go over to your attacker and your attacker is going to have double damage and increased accuracy. So she can work on either side. She can be a main supporter or a main attacker and she's going to be phenomenal either way. So Luck of the Draw is such a good skill. It's incredibly versatile. Normally I like to use Lux for the double damage and precision, and if you don't have Lux, lots of people use Lord of Atlantis, but now we have a monster who's as fast as Lux and gives the same buff but to your whole team instead of to one monster. So she's insanely good just based on this skill alone. Regardless of what skills you want to choose, this is one skill I think you can't live without. So if you get Incognita, you have to run Luck of the Draw. And now I'm going to move things over to skills group 3. In skills group 3 we have a skill called Divine Misfortune. Divine Misfortune deals heavy special damage, applies one random negative effect to all enemies, requires cooldown. So it targets only one enemy, it deals 50 damage, it costs 28 stamina, and it has a 2-turn cooldown. And because you have this skill, that's the reason I said you don't need the previous skill from skills group 1. This skill does the exact same thing except it deals more damage, and again combined with this monster's impressive power, that's what you're really after, dealing as much damage as possible. So this is a skill you may or may not want to run. I'll discuss all of this once I finish analyzing every skill. Moving on, we have Mystic Retrieval, and this skill deals heavy light damage to all enemies, gains regeneration, requires cooldown. So holy crap, let's just stop and look at this. It's an AoE that's 55 damage. This is the first 55 damage AoE skill we have. Normally we see 50, but now we have a 55. And again, I have to stress, this skill is coming at us with a monster who has the 3rd highest base power stat for light monsters, a base power of 3432. Even in the whole spectrum of Monster Legends, 3400, anything above that is super good. This monster, one of the highest powers in the game, and a 55 damage AoE, that is going to be insanely powerful. She has the potential to one-hit the whole enemy team if your strength runes are strong enough. But on top of that, so let's just review real quick. It's 40 stamina, a 3-turn cooldown, and you get life regeneration. You get life regeneration after dealing a massive blow to the enemy team. That is just icing on the cake. Like, what the heck is Social Point thinking right now? They gave us a monster with a high power, a high speed, a monster that can give herself and her team double damage, increased accuracy, and now a 55 damage AoE that also gives life regeneration. That is so darn good. You have to run this skill also. It is insanely good. There's no reason not to run this skill. And last but not least, we have Transference. Deals low light damage to all enemies, removes positive effects from targets, requires cooldown. So it attacks multiple targets, it's an AoE, 30 damage, 35 stamina, 2-turn cooldown. And this is another skill you may or may not want to run. It really depends on you. I do want to say the great thing about Transference is the fact that it removes all positive effects from the enemy targets. Keep in mind, if in Team Wars you're going up against light monsters have lots of buff skills. They like to give their team life regeneration, stamina regeneration, shields. So light against light, having something that can remove negative effects would really come in handy. It would also come in handy if you're going up against earth monsters. Earth monsters love to use shields. And scrolling back up to Fate is Fair, removes debuffs. This would come in handy if you're going up against light monsters, because light monsters also love to do lots of debuff, and also against magic monsters because magic monsters also love to give debuffs. And speaking more about debuffs, keep in mind that this monster has immune to possession. So if you're going up against a monster that has AoE possession, we'll say someone like Violet, and let's say Violet does AoE possession and it hits your 2 other monsters on your team, because you have immune to possession, you can do Fate is Fair and wipe out the possession from your allies. So this is also not that bad of a skill to have. So you're probably wondering, Armor, what skill should I choose since she has so many good skills? Well, it really depends on what kind of build you want to do. If you want to do an attacker build, I highly recommend running Luck of the Draw, Mystic Retrieval, Divine Misfortune, and then honestly it's up to you whether you want to do Transference or if you want to do Fate is Fair. Now for me personally, I would pick Transference. So if the enemy has some sort of shield, some sort of immunity that will protect them from not dying, what you want to do is that you want to remove whatever positive buff the enemy has, and then that'll allow you to deal some major damage in the next turn. But at the same time, you could argue that running Fate is Fair is better for an attacker build, because let's say the enemy has blinded you, has poisoned you, you would want to remove debuffs from your teams, which will allow you to deal more damage. So for that, it's really up to you. But again, the 3 major skills you should run for an attacker build are Luck of the Draw, Divine Misfortune, Mystic Retrieval. I don't really think Entropy is necessary, even though it's only a 0 turn cooldown. I think the other skills just serve a better purpose. Now let's say you want to run a supportive build. For a supportive build, I would recommend Fate is Fair to remove debuffs, Luck of the Draw to give your monsters double damage and increase precision, Divine Misfortune to apply negative effects to the enemy monsters, and Transference to remove any positive buffs your enemies may use on themselves. That would be my supportive build. For the supportive build, I would use all speed runes. And again, the idea of the supportive build, and this is rare where you can do this, is that this supportive monster is not only going to support your attacker, it's also going to be supporting your deny monster by giving it increased accuracy. And then you're really just relying on Fate is Fair to remove debuffs whenever you need to, or Transference to remove good effects from the enemy monsters, and Divine Misfortune is just a skill to give negative effects to the enemy monsters when it's needed. Some of you might argue that in this case it might be better to run Fate Speaks. Fate Speaks is a 1 turn cooldown instead of a 2 turn cooldown, and that's really arguable. I still say no, because even though this is a supportive build, because you have the Luck of the Draw on you, which gives you double damage, it is to your benefit to use Divine Misfortune, because you never know when you just need that extra damage to win the game. And for the rune setup, for the strength build, I recommend you run at least 2 strength runes, and if you have really high level strength runes, all you need is 2, and then for the last rune, run a speed rune. Now the only time you really need a speed rune, and I've said this in previous videos, is if your opponent has only level 10 runes. If your opponent doesn't have level 10 runes, if they have at most level 8 runes, you can get away without using the speed rune, and in that case you can actually just go ahead and do 3 strength runes and you're going to be good to go, and trust me, you're going to have an amazing attacker. And as far as what team she works best in, the cool thing about Incognita is that she works in any single team. She's honestly like the ultimate supportive monster. This is by far one of the best late monsters that's ever been released, and I imagine for a long time she's going to be indisputed as a supportive monster. So thank you Social Point for giving us this awesome monster, and this is actually going to conclude my analysis on Incognita. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think about this monster. Let me know if I missed anything in my analysis. I'm honestly just blown away by how good she is, so I highly recommend if anyone gets a chance, you have to absolutely get her. Incognita is too good of a monster to miss. So with all that being said, thank you to everyone who made it to the end of the analysis. Let me know your guys' thoughts on this monster. Let me know your guys' thoughts on the other monsters. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and guys, remember just to dream big and to pursue your passions.